You didn't
late.
lose your path.
You were arriving
It
with
curved
thunder
for a
that
reason
needed
you'll
silence
understand
first.
later.
Some
You weren't
storms
behind.
come not to
You
destroy.
were gathering storms
but to
in
remind the
quiet
world
strength.
how powerful
You
the
didn't miss
silence
out.
before lightning
You
can
dodged
be.
what would
You
have
didn't
dimmed your
lose.
spark. It
You
just
weren't
wasn't your
abandoned.
time to carry
You
that
were
kind
being
of weight.
set apart.
Some victories
You weren't
are
lost.
too heavy for
You were hidden
hands
for protection.
still learning how to rise.
You didn't mess up.
You weren't
You were
forgotten.
rearranged. You were being
You didn't waste
protected
time
from what your heart
You
wasn't
planted
ready
roots
to
you
touch.
can't see yet.
Absence
You weren't
isn't
late.
always abandonment.
You were in sync.
Sometimes
with a bigger
it's
rhythm.
divine delay.
You didn't fall back.
You weren't being punished.
You took a breath.
You were being
before the
positioned.
climb. You
The
weren't
universe
forgotten.
removes
You were
pieces
being prepared
before
in
it
silence.
reveals the masterpiece.
You didn't fail. You didn't
It
fail.
was a reroute to a better
You
summit.
evolved beyond
You
the
weren't
version
left
of yourself
behind.
that needed
You
that win.
stayed with your soul.
What we call losing
didn't break.
is sometimes
You
just
unfolded.
shedding skin
You
too
weren't
tight to grow in.
overlooked.
You weren't
You were
broken.
being protected
You were
from
being
shallow
redesigned.
flaws. You
Shattered
didn't
glass
shrink.
can
You
still
refined.
reflect light.
You weren't ignored.
Just differently,
You
brilliantly.
outgrew the need to be seen.
You weren't rejected.
You didn't quit.
You were being
You paused for
redirected to
purpose.
something sacred.
You weren't silenced.
Sometimes the
You
door
were learning to
slammed
roar
was guarding the
inwardly.
fire behind it.
You didn't freeze.
You weren't too much.
You became
You
still
were just
enough
too
to hear.
real for a world
You weren't
too
wrong.
used to masks.
You were early
Authenticity
for a future
feels
they don't understand
like
yet.
chaos to those
You
who've
didn't
only known
disappear.
disguise. You transformed
You didn't fall apart.
quietly.
You
You
were
weren't too
rearranging
emotional
into a truth
You
stronger
felt
than
what
your
others
past.
buried. There's
You
beauty
didn't
in collapse when
You
it's
bent
the
to rise
foundation
differently.
for rebuilding.
You weren't being
You
tested.
weren't being
you were being
ignored.
tuned.
You
were
didn't
being
fall.
listened to by
You floated
something
into
greater.
unknown truth.
Silence
You
is
weren't
where the
stuck.
universe
You were
speaks
building
the loudest.
unseen strength.
You didn't lose
You
your
didn't
path.
let go.
You
It
honored
curved for a
growth.
reason you'll
You weren't
understand
rejected.
later.
You
You
grew
weren't
out of their
behind.
reach. You were
You
gathering
didn't end.
storms
You
in
turned the
quiet
page.
strength. You weren't
You
too
didn't miss out.
sensitive.
You
were
dodged
listening deeper.
what would have dimmed your
You
spark.
didn't lose faith.
You weren't abandoned.
You questioned what no
You were
longer
being set
resonated.
apart.
You weren't too
lost.
deep.
They
You were
just
hidden
wanted
for
shallow
protection.
waters.
You didn't
You
mess
didn't
up.
run.
You were rearranged.
You released what no
You didn't
longer
waste
fit.
time. You weren't
You
failing.
planted roots you can't
You
see
were
yet.
evolving beyond
You weren't
comfort.
late.
You
were
didn't
in sync
detach
with a bigger rhythm.
You created space
You didn't
for
fall
clarity.
back.
You weren't
You took a
wrong
breath
to feel
before the climb.
It was your compass
You weren't
talking.
forgotten.
You didn't
were
walk
being
away.
prepared in silence.
You honored your peace.
You didn't fail.
You weren't cold.
It was a reroute to
You
a
were
better
protecting
summit.
your warmth.
You weren't
You
left
didn't
behind.
stop. You
paused
stayed
with
with your
soul.
You weren't
You didn't
invisible.
break. You unfolded.
You were too radiant
You weren't
for their eyes.
overlooked.
You weren't late.
You were being protected
You were
from
arriving
shallow
with thunder
applause.
that needed silence.
You didn't shrink.
First. You refined.
Some storms come
You weren't
not
ignored.
to destroy.
You
But to
outgrew
remind
the
the
need
world
to be
how
seen.
powerful the
You
silence
didn't quit
before
You
lightning
paused
can
for
be.
purpose.
You didn't
weren't
lose.
silenced.
It just wasn't
You
your
were
time
learning
to
to
carry
roar
that kind of weight.
inwardly.
Some
You didn't
victories are
freeze.
too
You
heavy for
became
hands
still enough to hear.
still learning
You
how to
weren't
rise.
wrong.
You
were
weren't
early
forgotten
for a future
You
they
were
don't
being
understand
protected
yet.
from what your
You
heart
didn't
wasn't
disappear.
ready to touch.
You transformed
Absence
quietly.
isn't always
You weren't
abandonment.
too emotional.
Sometimes
You felt
it's
what
divine
others
delay.
buried.
You
You
weren't
didn't
being
collapse.
punished.
You
were
bent to
being
rise
positioned.
differently.
The
You weren't
universe
being tested.
removes
You were
pieces
being
before
tuned.
it reveals
You didn't
the
fall.
masterpiece. You
You
floated
didn't
into
fail.
unknown truth.
You evolved
You weren't
beyond
stuck.
the version of yourself
You were building
that needed that
unseen
win.
strength.
What we call
You didn't let
losing
go.
is sometimes
You
just
honored
shedding
growth.
skin too
You
tight
weren't
to grow
rejected.
in.
You
grew
weren't
out of their
broken.
reach.
You were being redesigned.
You didn't end. You turned
Shattered
the page.
glass can still
You weren't too
reflect
sensitive.
light.
You were
Just
listening
differently,
brilliantly.
You didn't lose faith.
You weren't rejected.
You questioned
You were
what
being
no longer
redirected
resonated
to something
You
sacred.
weren't too deep.
Sometimes
They just
the door
wanted shallow
slammed
waters.
was guarding the fire
You didn't
behind
run.
it. You weren't
You
too
released
much.
what no longer
You
fit.
were just too real.
You
for
weren't
a world
failing.
too used to masks.
You were evolving beyond
Authenticity
comfort.
feels like
You didn't
chaos
attach
to those who've only
You
known
created
disguise.
space for clarity.
You didn't fall apart.
You weren't wrong to feel.
You were rearranging
It was your
into
compass
a truth
talking.
stronger than
You
your
didn't
past.
walk away.
There's beauty
You
in
honored your
collapse
peace.
when it's the
You weren't
foundation
cold
for rebuilding.
You were protecting
You weren't
your warmth.
being ignored.
You didn't
You
stop.
were being listened
You
to
paused
by
the noise.
something greater.
You weren't invisible.
Silence is where the
You were
universe
too radiant
speaks
for their
the
eyes.
loudest.
Here
You
are
didn't come here to follow
150
maps.
engaging
You
quotes
came
for
to
YouTube
build
videos
roads where none existed.
with a focus on impact
Healing isn't
and
always
without
graceful.
attribution.
It's
Starting
fierce
with
6
6
hooks
hooks
and
60
unapologetically
second
yours.
quote hooks.
You outgrew
You
their
weren't late.
understanding the moment.
You were arriving
started
with
listening
thunder
to
that
your
needed
own
silence
soul.
first.
Some people
The
weren't meant
quietest
to stay.
moments
They
often
were only mirrors
precede
for a moment.
the loudest
Growth
triumphs.
doesn't always look
Some
pretty.
stories aren't told.
Sometimes it looks like
They're
saying
felt
no
in the
without
core
guilt.
of your being.
You were never
Before
too
the
much.
masterpiece,
They were just
there is
unprepared
always
for
the
someone
struggle
who
of the
felt
first
everything.
brushstroke.
The most
What if the
powerful
detour
thing
isn't
you
a
did
wrong
was
turn,
keep breathing,
but the scenic
through
route to
what
destiny?
tried to drown you.
The greatest
You
risks
weren't born to
lead
shrink
to
the
for
most
love.
extraordinary
You were
views.
born to radiate
Engaging
through it.
quotes for
Your
videos.
purpose isn't found
Your
in
path
rushing.
is carved
It's
by your
revealed
courage,
in becoming,
not by
You don't owe the
consensus.
world perfection.
Growth demands
You owe
a
it your
willingness
truth.
to outgrow
The moment
who
you
once
stopped
were.
seeking
The
approval,
moment you believe
was
in
the
your
moment
magic,
you became
the world
limitless.
starts to see it too.
You don't heal
Don't
by
just
pretending.
exist. It
Ignite
begins
the space
when you
you
let the
occupy.
pain speak its
Every
name.
sunrise
The
is
right
an invitation
path
to
often
begin
feels
anew,
lonely at
bolder
first.
than before.
That's how you
The
know
whispers
it's
of your
sacred.
intuition
You aren't
are louder
rebuilding
than
the
shouts
old you.
of doubt.
You're
Build a
constructing
life
a
that feels
masterpiece
good on
from
the
inside.
ashes.
Not
You
just
didn't break.
one that looks good on the outside.
You cracked open
True
to let the
strength
divine
isn't
pour
about
through.
never falling.
The pain didn't
but
destroy
about
you.
rising every
It
single
carved
time.
space for wisdom.
Let your actions
Not everyone
be the
is meant to
echoes of your
understand your
deepest
silence.
aspirations.
It was built
The canvas
for
of your
divine
life
frequency.
is waiting for your
You don't
most
rise because
vibrant
it's
colors.
easy.
You rise
Challenge
because
what's
the flame
comfortable.
inside demands it.
Comfort
You
rarely
weren't made to
creates
fit
greatness.
You were made
Find
to
the
break
extraordinary
the
in the
mold
everyday,
entirely.
and your
Your
perspective
power
will
doesn't
shift.
lie in being loud.
Fear
It
is
lies
a
in being
compass,
deeply rooted,
pointing to where you need
You're
to
not
grow.
behind. The
You're
masterpiece
blooming in
is
a
in the
season
messy middle,
untouched
not
by
just
comparison.
the perfect end.
Every
What you
version of
seek
you
is
was
also
necessary.
seeking you. Prepare
Even
for
the
the
one
meeting that cried in
Unpack your
secret.
past.
You don't need
but
to
don't
rush
live there.
what's written in
Your
spirit.
future awaits.
It will find
The
you when
universe
you're ready.
conspires
Some
for those
storms
who dare
came
to
to
wash
wash away
away
everything
Speak
you
your
thought
truth.
you needed.
Even
You don't
if your
need to be
voice
understood.
trembles.
You
Your
need
inner
to be
peace
authentic.
is your
Your
greatest
light
power.
is intimidating
The most
to those
beautiful
still hiding in
sunsets
shadows.
require
Trust
cloudy
the timing
skies.
that doesn't make sense.
Embrace the
It's
unexpected.
the one closest
It
to
often
truth.
holds the greatest
Let your
lessons.
peace be louder
Let
than
your
your pain.
failures be
Stop
footnotes,
explaining your
not
growth
your final
to those
chapter.
who benefit.
The only
from your
limits that
silence
exist are the
you
ones
weren't
you place
overlooked
on yourself.
You were being aligned.
Your potential
the pain
is
didn't
limitless.
win. It
Your
introduced
beliefs
you
are
to
the
your
only
power.
boundaries.
Your
See,
softness
the energy
isn't weakness.
you want to attract
It's your
into your
rebellion
life.
in a hardened
Courage
world.
is not
You were
the
never meant
absence
to
of
blend
fear,
in, but the
you were meant
triumph
to
over
awaken.
it. The
You
quietest
don't find yourself
moments
you remember
often contain the
your
most
highest self
profound
isn't
revelations.
It's
Don't
whispering
chase the light.
through your discomfort.
Become the light.
You're not
The journey
waiting.
of 1,000
You're
miles
weaving
begins
legacy
with a
in
single,
quiet,
brave
You aren't
step.
too sensitive.
The universe
You're
doesn't
deeply
give you what you
tuned to
want.
the frequencies
It gives
others
you what you
ignore.
are.
There
Your
is
story
no back
is still
to
being
normal.
written.
There's
Make
only
it a
forward
page
to
turner.
truth.
You don't
Transform
become
your
by
wounds
force
into
You
wisdom.
unfold by
The
faith.
best view comes
Don't fear
after
the
the
alone
hardest
time.
climb.
Let your
That's where your
dreams
power
be bigger
sharpens.
than your fears.
Not everyone
the space
deserves
between what you
access
have and
to
what
your
you want
sacred
is where
space.
true growth
You
happens.
didn't lose them.
Your
You
greatest
lost the layer
adventure
that held
is
you
waiting
back.
beyond your
Your
comfort
grief
zone.
is a doorway
Don't count
to
the
deeper
days. Make the
compassion.
days count.
You aren't
The
starting
biggest
over.
risk is not
You're
taking
starting
any
aligned.
risk at all. You
Be
didn't
so
stop.
good they can't
You
ignore
paused
you.
long enough to
The
listen.
future belongs
There's
to
no
those
map
who
for
believe
becoming.
in the beauty of
You
their
build
dreams.
it with each bold step.
Find beauty in
You're
the
not the
broken.
mess, and
They are
strength
mirrors
in
of
the
what you're
struggle.
no longer willing
The only
to
way
tolerate.
to do great work
Some
is
endings
to
are
love
holy.
what you do.
Let them
Invest
bless
in
you
yourself.
as they pass.
It's the
You
only
didn't
asset
fall off.
that truly
You stepped out to
appreciates.
find air
Your
they
voice
couldn't
matters.
breathe.
Let it resonate.
You're here to
The
rewrite
seeds of
narratives,
success are
not
planted
repeat them.
in persistence.
You are what happens
Turn your
when
obstacles
survival turns
into
into
stepping
sovereignty.
stones.
Your
The most
silence
powerful
isn't
magic
empty.
is
It's
the belief
sacred
in
space
yourself.
being born.
Life
If they
is a
couldn't
grand
love the
adventure.
growing you,
Live it
they were
boldly.
attached to your
Some
cage.
lessons are learned
You don't
in
need
the storm,
saving. You
not
need to
in
be
the
seen.
sunshine. You are
Your
not
legacy
broken.
is built
You
in
are
the choices
blooming
you make
through
today.
cracked soil.
Be a seeker of
Your
wisdom,
heartbreak,
a doer of
held
good,
space
and a
for
creator
a
of
heart
joy.
twice as
The
strong.
rhythm of your heart
Don't dim
is your
to be
own
digestible.
unique symphony.
Be real.
The
Even if
best
it shakes the
revenge
room.
is massive
You're not
success.
confused.
Don't be
You're
afraid to
outgrowing
sparkle a
old
little brighter.
limitations.
The art
The
of
feeling
living
of discomfort
is learning
is
to
your
dance
fire in the rain.
self-stretching.
Your presence is your power. Embrace the glorious mess that you are. The world needs your unique brilliance. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. You weren't late. You were arriving with thunder that needed silence first. You didn't miss your moment. The universe was clearing the noise so you'd be heard clearly. You didn't fall behind. You were learning to walk in dimensions others can't reach. You're not lost. You're hidden in divine timing until the world is ready for your light. You weren't delayed. You were being wrapped in protection, too powerful to see. The world thought you were quiet, but really, you were becoming untouchable. Your silence wasn't empty. It was a prayer, a scream, and a rebirth in disguise. You didn't disappear. You became sacred to a timeline not yet understood. You weren't waiting. You were becoming something no one could rush. You didn't slow down. You stepped out of time so your soul could catch up. They thought you quit, but you were only stepping back to come back louder. Your absence wasn't failure. It was spiritual construction. You weren't invisible. You were being protected by invisibility itself. The detour didn't derail you. It redirected you into destiny's arms. You weren't ignored. You were set aside for something rare and real. The delay was mercy. It kept you from accepting what was beneath you. You weren't broken. You were breaking through dimensions. They didn't understand or pause. but creation always begins in stillness. You weren't silent, you were speaking in a language only the stars could hear. You weren't waiting, you were remembering your original design. You didn't come here to follow maps. You came to build roads where none existed. Healing isn't always graceful. It's fierce, sacred, and unapologetically yours. You outgrew their understanding the moment you started listening to your own soul. Some people weren't meant to stay, they were only mirrors for a moment. Growth doesn't always look pretty. Sometimes it looks like saying no without guilt. You were never too much. They were just unprepared for someone who felt everything. The most powerful thing you did was keep breathing through what tried to drown you. You weren't born to shrink for love. You were born to radiate through it. Your purpose isn't found in rushing. It's revealed in becoming. You don't owe the world perfection. You owe it your truth. The moment you stopped seeking approval was the moment you became limitless. You don't heal by pretending. It begins when you let the pain speak its name. The right path often feels lonely at first. That's how you know it's sacred. You aren't rebuilding the old you. You're constructing a masterpiece from the ashes. You didn't break. You cracked open to let the divine pour through. The pain didn't destroy you. It carved space for wisdom. Not everyone is meant to understand your silence. It was built for divine frequency. You don't rise because it's easy. You rise because the flame inside demands it. You weren't made to fit in. You were made to break the mold entirely. Your power doesn't lie in being loud. It lies in being deeply rooted. You're not behind. You're blooming in a season untouched by comparison. Every version of you was necessary, even the one that cried in secret. You don't need to rush what's written in spirit. It will find you when you're ready. Some storms came to wash away everything you thought you needed. You don't need to be understood. You need to be authentic. Your light is intimidating to those still hiding in shadows. Trust the timing that doesn't make sense. It's the one closest to truth. Let your peace be louder than your pain. Stop explaining your growth to those who benefit from your silence. You weren't overlooked. You were being aligned. The pain didn't win. It introduced you to your power. Your softness isn't weakness. It's your rebellion in a hardened world. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to awaken. You don't find yourself, you remember. Your highest self isn't waiting. It's whispering through your discomfort. You're not waiting. You're weaving legacy in quiet. You aren't too sensitive. You're deeply tuned to the frequencies others ignore. There is no back to normal. There's only forward to truth. You don't become by force. You unfold by faith. Don't fear the alone time. That's where your power sharpens. Not everyone deserves access to your sacred space. You didn't lose them. You lost a layer that held you back. Your grief is a doorway to deeper compassion. You aren't starting over. You're starting aligned. You didn't stop. You paused long enough to listen. There is no map for becoming. You build it with each bold step. You're not the mess. They are mirrors of what you're no longer willing to tolerate. Some endings are holy. Let them bless you as they pass. You didn't fall off. You stepped out to find air they couldn't breathe. You're here to rewrite narratives, not repeat them. You are what happens when survival turns into sovereignty. Your silence isn't empty. It's sacred space being born. If they couldn't love the growing you, they were attached to your cage. You don't need saving. You need to be seen. You are not broken. You are blooming through cracked soil. Your heartbreak held space for a heart twice as strong. Don't dim to be digestible. Be real, even if it shakes the room. You're not confused. You're outgrowing old limitations. The feeling of discomfort is your higher self stretching. The more you trust, the less you chase. You're not small. You're just standing in places that don't reflect your size. Your glow isn't optional. It's inevitable. Stop shrinking. You were made to eclipse. When you honor your intuition, you become unstoppable. The detours saved you from destinations that lacked depth. You're not rebuilding. You're returning. You don't owe access to anyone just because they knew a past version of you. Every version of you is sacred, even the one that didn't know better. You were the closure. You just hadn't accepted it yet. There's power in not performing. Don't wait to be chosen. You already are. Some pain was never meant to be healed. It was meant to be honored. You are not the wound. You are the one who chose to heal it. Let what falls away make space for what's eternal. You've always been enough. You were just around people who couldn't see clearly. There's magic in the mundane when your soul is awake. Peace is the loudest revolution in a world built on noise. Your value isn't in what you do. It's in who you are. You weren't made to chase. You were made to attract by becoming. The softest part of you carries the loudest wisdom. You don't find peace, you become it. Rejection wasn't failure, it was guidance. Let them go. Your next chapter requires space. The quiet version of you is still powerful. Don't confuse pause with failure. You are light wearing skin. Never forget. Trust your seasons, even the cold ones. Becoming isn't always loud. Sometimes it's still, soft, and sacred. Your breakthrough won't always be seen, but it will be felt. You weren't made to settle. You were made to soar. Your next level won't be found in familiar places. There's no need to convince anyone when you're clear within. You're allowed to begin again without apology. You didn't change. You returned to your true self. Don't rush the blooming. You're a whole galaxy unfolding. You've already won. You just haven't seen the ending yet. Your rest is not laziness, it's leadership. The spaces you outgrow are proof of your evolution. Not every connection deserves reconciliation. You're not difficult, you're divine.